Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. Old Luke, how are you, sir?
Doing great, man. I'm trying to get out of Mobile before I get sunburned. We'll see if that happens.
The old January into February sunburn. You hate to see that. Jeff Ireland was there. Did you pick anything up from him?
I think a little bit. I think I was interested in what he had to say about the team's like prototypes and like kind of the history they have with drafting players. Like, I don't think the prototype is necessarily going to change, but I do think that they're going to look at adding some different types of players to their roster. I remember last year around draft time when Georgia edge rusher Nolan Smith was available and people were like clamoring for them to take him, and you just knew that they never were going to do that because they don't draft those types of players. They don't draft like the 225-pound guy who's coming off the edge and chasing down quarterbacks. So I think the Saints are going to kind of consider adding people like that to the roster and kind of creating a spot for them because they know they need to get a little bit more athletic on the edge. So maybe it's not going to be drafting them to be like their prototypical defensive end, but I do think they're going to kind of have to change with the way the league's changing a little bit.
I thought one of Jeff Ireland's comments about needing the ammunition, meaning the draft picks, to go do some things. Do you think there's going to be an effort to try to accumulate a couple more picks before this coming draft by moving someone off the roster?
It wouldn't surprise me. I was talking to somebody yesterday, just another reporter, about like, okay, yeah, it was kind of, I think you asked me like a similar question. It was like, okay, of Ryan Ramczyk and Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara, maybe a couple others, like how many of those guys are going to be back next year? You just don't know. Ramczyk, I don't think is like a trade candidate, but like, we don't know whether he's going to be healthy enough to return next year. And I think you look at Alvin and you look at Marshawn and two guys who are still good NFL players. Obviously both have some question marks. Alvin's coming off a down year, and Marshawn is coming off 2 straight years where he's hurt. But there's probably some trade value there. You have to deal with the financial aspect of it, which would be kind of a tough pill to swallow for the Saints. But you listen to what Ireland is saying, and it's true. They've got an aging roster. They've got an expensive roster, and the way you combat those two things is to get young, cheap players in your team and get a bunch of them. So the question is just like, what does that return look like for those players? Is a team going to be willing to give up a day 2 pick for Marshawn Lattimore, even though he's played 17 games the last 2 years and he has a $30 million cap hit in 2025? What's a team going to be willing to give up for a running back who's kind of fastly approaching his 30th birthday and he hasn't been that effective the last couple of years? I don't know if the return is worth the financial penalty you kind of have to eat, but you got to look into it.
Look into it. I think you probably need to look into another option outside of Michael Thomas after the tweets over the weekend. We've asked a couple people about it again, but I'll give your thoughts on, or what are your thoughts on Michael Thomas's social media presence and future with the franchise?
I think I'll avoid commenting on Mike's social media because I can't actually see it. I've been blocked for like 4 years, even though I don't think I've ever written anything like negative or overtly negative about the guy. So that's interesting. But like, look, I just think to me, it's pretty clear that the two sides are heading for a split. I didn't have anybody like here like explicitly say that, but that's the vibes that you pick up from everybody here, is that it's kind of run its course. And look, Mike was one of the NFL's premier playmakers for his first 4 years in the NFL. He averaged like 118 catches and 1,400 yards per year. But the last 4 years, he's totaled like 95 catches and like 1,100 yards. He's only played 20 games in the last 4 years. So, at some point the headache isn't worth it because the production just hasn't been there. And clearly, him and Derek Carr were not on the same page. And if you base off of the social media, I don't know if Mike even wants to play with Derek Carr anymore. And Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback next year. So, I think it's just pretty clearly headed for a split, and we'll probably see him playing elsewhere next year.
You've got Chris Olave, you've got Rashid Shaheed. A.T. Perry had a nice last month there. Is that the top three going forward without Michael Thomas, or do they need to add there?
I think they'd have to add. AT, for the really nice moments he had, we didn't really get to see him as a guy who's playing a lot of snaps. I don't know if you could really just go into it saying, yeah, we're going to count on that guy. And then just considering their body types and some of the injury history, I think you'd be kind of wary about just counting on Olave and Shaheed to be there for 17 games. I think you'd have to add to the room. Whether that's as a draft pick. I mean, I think you've seen in the NFL the last couple of years, you can add a pretty good receiver with a early day 3 pick or a late day 2 pick. You can get these guys and you can find them in the draft. So I would expect them to definitely add to the room if the expected happens and Michael Thomas is not here anymore.
Luke Johnson, Saints beat writer for The Advocate, joining us here on the Hunt Palmer Show. Offensive coordinator search is not moving very quickly. It seems like they're interviewing a lot of folks, though. What is your read from the outside on how this process has gone?
I was talking to somebody last night, and it was just, I think the vibe is that they're wanting to, they're content to just take their time with this and to make sure they're getting the right guy, and that it really could happen anytime. For all I know, it could happen tomorrow. It could happen next week. I just hope to God it doesn't happen on Mardi Gras Day. I hope they don't do that to me. But two of the candidates, and I think two of the candidates that, if it were me, they'd be at the top of my list, are Brian Greasy and Quinn Kubiak, and those guys are coaching in the Super Bowl. So, I don't really know exactly how these job interviews work and the timing of these things work. I don't know if they are even allowed to accept a job before the end of the season. But it could drag on until after the Super Bowl, or we could hear something on Friday, tomorrow. I just think that it's kind of just the possibilities are fully open on that.
How desirable is this offensive coordinator job?
I think when you're looking at these availabilities, they're all open for a reason.
Right.
I think you look at some of the pieces here, and you could say you could talk yourself into it being a pretty good spot to land. And it doesn't really matter to me. I've been thinking about this. Maybe Dennis Allen is a quote unquote lame duck coach going into this year. You don't really know what his status is going to be after 2024. So maybe that's a little bit worrisome if you're an offensive coordinator candidate coming in, but also if you're an offensive coordinator and your team does really good, it doesn't really matter. Those guys, you see them get plucked off for head coach jobs after a year of experience as a play caller all the time if their offenses are really good. And we saw Bobby Slowick at head coach interviews this year, and prior to this year, he had no offensive coordinator play calling experience. So, I don't think that part really matters to me. I think it's really, to me, it's about the personnel. And I think you have some really exciting pass catching options on the team. You've got a quarterback who has proven he can do it. Whether you feel that he can do it at a high level in your offense is another thing. He was really up and down his debut season in New Orleans, but if you drop him into the right scheme, maybe it could be really good. I think the big concern for me is the offensive line. They've got talent on it, obviously, but those guys have really underperformed the last 2 years. So it's whether you can marry your scheme with what they've got here. I think that's the big question for me.
Anything else of note from your time in Mobile before we let you go?
A couple things, but I'm going to hold off on it because I'm posting something here shortly.
There you go. I understand. Just thought I'd ask. We appreciate you making some time for us.
Fair. It's fair. I will talk to you about it next week. But there's a little bit coming out in a little bit here.
Love to see it. Luke Johnson at Luke Johnson on Twitter. You can find it over at The Advocate as well. Luke, thanks for the time. Safe travels back down I-10.
All right, man. Thanks.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button. Leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.